The meeting shortly. I'll just check with my colleague Matt that we're okay to start.
Morning, Mike. Yes, the meeting has started. The recording and the live stream are ready for you. Thank you very much.
Okay, apologies. My camera might have gone down for some reason. Bear with me a second. Right. Hopefully everyone can hear me and see me now. Matt, can you hear and see me?
Yes, Mark, loud and clear. Thank you.
Lovely, thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the annual meeting of the SRS Joint Committee on Wednesday, the 19th of June, 2024 at 10 a.m. My name's Mark Thomas. I'll be the Democratic Scrutiny Services Officer supporting the meeting today with my colleague Matt Swindell. And before we start the main agenda of the meeting, I'm just going to go through some housekeeping. Hope everyone can still hear me okay. Hello everyone and welcome to this meeting of the Shared Regulatory Services Joint Committee. Before we start, please can I remind everyone that this meeting is being live streamed and the recording archived for future viewing. If a participant wishes to speak, please use the raised hand function in order to alert myself or the chair that you would like to speak. I will indicate, myself or the chair will indicate when it is your turn to speak, so please then select the request to speak button which will allow you to come on screen. Please ensure that all debate is raised verbally and not via the chat function on the software platform. The chat function should only be used to highlight any technical issues and or to get the attention of the chair or myself as a Democratic Services Officer. Thank you, everyone, and I'll hand you over now to the first agenda item, which I believe is the appointment of the chair for the committee. As per the normal process around SRS, this moves from year to year to the relevant members of each authority. So this year it will be the Cardiff Local Authority and Councillor Norma Mackey. So I'll hand over to Councillor Mackey now for the rest of the agenda. Thank you, Councillor. Sorry, Chair, I think you're mute.
Apologies. Good start. Thank you, Mark, for the introduction. And can I just say I'm glad to be back with Shared Regulatory Services and looking forward to this meeting. Item one was this handover to me. And then we've got item 2 on the agenda is the appointment of the Vice Chair. This year will be Councillor Ruba Sivanganam, Cabinet Member for Community Engagement, Equalities and Regulatory Services, the Vale Council. I assume you're online, Ruba, and welcome to that post. For item 3, we have apologies for absence. And I understand.
No, sorry, Chair, you've probably got the information. I was just going to say that we have got one from Councillor Howell Williams from Regent.
Yes, thank you very much. Yeah. Any other apologies? No? Lovely. Item 4 is the minutes of the last joint meeting that was on the 20th of March 2024. And any, for the people who were there at the time, do you have any, can you approve them for accuracy?
I can move those, Chair.
Oh, thank you very much. And
I'll second that, Chair.
Thank you very much. And any matters arising from them, from the minutes? No, none at all. Lovely. That's great. And item 5, any declarations of interest, please? No, we don't seem to have any declarations of interest. Thank you very much. So we can go on to the papers now of the meeting. Agenda item 6 is the SRS 2003-2004 unaudited statement of accounts. And I believe as Matt Bowmer, the Bill Glamorgan Head of Finance, is on leave, the Section 151 officer is on leave, this paper will be presented by the Deputy Gemma Jones, Operational Manager Accountancy. Gemma, do you want to come in, please?
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you for having me. Apologies for the late circulation of the appendices to this item. So I believe members will have had the draft accounts yesterday afternoon, and then the annual governance statement, which is normally at the end of the accounts, was circulated separately just before this meeting. So apologies, and I appreciate members won't have had opportunity to review those papers in full. They are very much draft, so our sign-off date is the 28th of June. So we'll be continuing to carry out QA for the rest of the period of this month. And if members do have any questions that they want to ask on the accounts today, but if they want to ask any questions for the remainder of the period of June, obviously I'll be happy to take any of those questions electronically. In a similar approach to last year, I mean, we're not expecting the outturn, for instance, to change or any of the kind of balance sheet figures, but it might be that there are some narrative changes to the accounts. And if those are required, we will absolutely circulate a kind of revised version of the accounts before the end of this month. And in a similar approach to last year, from a kind of Audit Wales perspective, we are expecting the main local authority accounts to be prioritised. And the shared regulatory service accounts will be picked up afterwards, but also if there's any kind of additional capacity as we go through the audit. In terms of the kind of key headlines in the accounts, and this will be quite a financial accounts focused summary, because of course we have the annual return to pick up the kind of management accounts type outturn. We have seen a reduction in usable reserves, and that's obviously been reported as we've progressed through the monitoring throughout this year. And that's a mixture, isn't it? So there are some specific service pressures that are being reported in the monitoring and the outturn reports. So things like the food inspections, but we have got that theme of the kind of pay awards and savings within the service as well. And I think what we're seeing is that's removing the capacity of the service, and true of lots of council services, to absorb these emerging pressures then in year. In addition to that, we have a purchase of a vehicle that's reflected in the council's in the Joint Committee's accounts. We have seen a reduction in the pension liability, and I think that's a theme that all local authorities are seeing. And I know lots of other local authorities have moved to a pension asset rather than a liability. We are still in the liability space, but that liability has decreased dramatically over the last couple of years. And that's slightly as a result of changes around kind of mortality assumptions, but also around projections around pay going forward, and CPI assumptions, and around it performance as well. And then the other note that I was just going to draw out is an increased debtor balance at year end. And I think we've seen quite high debtor balances at year end for the last couple of years. And that's partly just purely due to the mechanics of when some of the contribution invoices are raised. And that's something that we can pick up as a host authority going forward into 24-25. I did want to talk briefly about the annual governance statement. In terms of the service-specific elements, I think we can largely pick those up as part of the annual return item. We have had an internal audit carried out in year, which we do every year, and there were a number of issues identified, but I think that largely reflects how comprehensive that internal audit report was. There are some intricacies associated with the shared regulatory services in terms of the types of expenditure around test purchases. And I think, it's timely that we review how those test purchases are progressed, but obviously there does need to be some flexibility in terms of the mechanics of how we manage that expenditure. So I think sometimes we use purchase cards and sometimes we use petty cash type arrangement. So that will be reviewed. The number of petty cash accounts will also be reviewed, and we'll review rolling out purchase cards within the service in a bit more extensively. Our car mileage policy is also being refreshed as a host authority, and that reflects our hybrid working approach now as well. So I think that's quite timely, and that can be communicated across the service as well. There was also an issue raised around how the budget contributions for 23-24 and 24-25 have been allocated across the partner authorities. So I think whereas the joint working agreement states via population for 23-24 and 24-25, we've used aggregate external finance, which is the council's funding from Welsh Government via RSG and the NDR. And we've used that to apportion the contributions. Now, obviously, a massive driver of that funding is population, but it does mean there is some differences as opposed to if we'd allocated the contributions via population. Obviously, those contributions were all set out in the Joint Committee report for the budget and were all agreed by the relevant partner authorities. So there's no intention to amend those contributions for 23-24, but we did want to bring it to everybody's attention. And obviously the discrepancy was made by the Vale of Glamorgan Council as host authority, and having looked at the comparison in the figures, it is relatively small, but it would have meant that the Vale of Glamorgan Council would have benefited and the other partner authorities would have made a larger contribution. And therefore, given that the contributions were agreed by all the relevant partners on the basis, and it is, of course, a crude apportionment methodology, the intention is that the 23-24 contributions stand, and we'll need to have a wider conversation with the partner authorities around how those 24-25 contributions are managed. And of course, we'll move to the population apportionment methodology for 25-26 in accordance with the joint working agreement. So those were the main points that I was going to draw out on the report and the appendices. If Joint Committee are happy to approve these accounts, they will now go to Audit Wales for external audit, and we'll be bringing the results of that audit back, hopefully slightly ahead of last year, but certainly later in this financial year. Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Gemma. Any questions? No? That was excellent, thank you. And right on to agenda item 7, the draft SRS annual report 23-24.
Apologies, Chair. Just to check on the last item that Gemma presented, the recommendations, just to make sure that the committee are happy with those.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I haven't. Yeah, I didn't realise we had to.
I'm happy to move that report, Chair.
Excellent. Thank you. And anybody seconding that then?
Hello, Chair. Councillor Drake has got her hand up to second the report. Thank you.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, I can see that now. Yeah, thank you. These new systems. So that the report then is approved and moved. Thank you. Item 7 then. The draft SRS annual report 2003-24. I believe Helen is introducing this as first, and then other officers coming in.
Thank you, Chair, and good morning, everyone. So yes, this is the annual report, and you'll recall that under the Joint Working Agreement, we're required to produce an annual report that covers the operational and financial performance of the service for the preceding year. And this has to be presented in accordance with the Joint Working Agreement no later than the 30th of June, hence it comes to the AGM today. Hard to believe this is the 9th annual report that is being produced under this requirement, and it covers the period 1st of April 23 to the 31st of March 2024. If the content of the report is agreed, a copy of it must be sent to the head of paid service of each of the 3 councils, along with the SRS business plan for 2024-25, which will be the following agenda item. So I'm not going to dwell on the early part of this report. I'm sure all will be familiar to you. If I can move you to section 2, key areas for consideration. And in there, we've listed the milestones which we've set in the previous annual report for the year just gone. And we'll come back to that right at the end of the report to look at how those have been slightly adjusted to take us through this current financial year 24-25. So at this point, I wonder, Chair, if we could bring Gemma in to do the financial input, which would normally be at the end of this report, because I'm conscious that Gemma has another commitment, so it'd be really helpful if she could do the finance input at this stage.
Hello. Thank you for having me. So in terms of the outturn position, there's an overspend of £171,000, which is set out within the report, and that's split. So it's 118,000 of that is against the authority specific part of the budget, and £53,000 of that is associated with the core part of the budget. And there are a number of themes that are underpinning that position. And as part of that overspend, but also the planned use of reserves in year, we've seen usable reserves reduced to 450,000. I think there's a slight rounding between the statement of accounts and the report, but it's 450,000 is the general fund of the Joint Committee and the earmarked reserves as at the 31st of March 2024. And as I noted in the accounts, I think some of the pressures around the pay pressure, but also the savings that the service was required to make for 23-24, that certainly impacted the ability of the service then to manage emerging pressures. And whereas we have seen some overspends against the authority-specific element of the budget in previous years, this is why we've got that emerging overspending in core as well. Now, the report does note some of the key reasons why there is an overspent against the core service, and that's in part because the assumptions around the pay award weren't accurate. So, and that's partly because the budget is set slightly earlier than we have more realistic assumptions around the pay award, and as members will be aware, some of those negotiations went quite late into the 23-24 financial year. We've also got some notes around food inspections and some of the pressures around some additional resource that was required there. In terms of the authority-specific budget, obviously that's in line with some of the outturn that we've seen in previous years, and some of that relates to that historic budget issue that we have in authority-specific, which I believe will be mitigated in part going forward into 24-25, and that's been discussed previously in committee. Those drawdowns on reserves, so they're slightly larger than had been reported through the financial year, and that's reflecting the overspend position being slightly more than had been reported at the Q3 monitoring. And it also includes the repayment associated with the 22-23 outturn position following the finalisation of the accounts, and also those specific earmarked drawdown from reserves that were planned for as we went through the financial year. So a very brief overview of the financial position. And obviously there's a lot more information in terms of the service position as part of the outturn, but I am happy to take any questions on the financial aspects of the report.
Yeah, Councillor Sifngham, do you want to come in?
Thank you, Chair. I mean, really not specifically for Gemma, but it may be something for Helen to sort of touch on later. It's really a comment, really, because I mean we've, I think the narrative around the pay awards, I think we knew in advance, and we knew that this would have an impact. And I'm just interested to hear a bit more, and I'm sure Helen will go into this about. I'll catch up on the food safety stuff, because I know the team's worked hard to catch up post COVID and going forward. And I'd like to hear a little bit more about the authority specific issues and how those are going to be addressed going forward for the following year. So I think it is more Helen than Gemma.
No.
I'm okay to answer that, Chair.
Absolutely.
Yes, absolutely, Councillor Tivignan. As you're aware, we have had, don't want to give a spoiler here, we're coming on to that shortly. We have had a very impressive year in terms of catching up on the food programme, and those conversations are well rehearsed, the backlogs that unfortunately all local authorities were suffering with following the COVID response. So unfortunately, that has come at a cost to supplement the great work which has been done by our officers. We have had to spend some outlay on agency staff to help us recover that lost ground. And there are other areas in expenditure which is in the detail of that financial element of the annual report, where we have had an unanticipated expenditure, and we've had to cover with drawdowns from reserves. An example being the cost of caring for animals seized on welfare grounds from illegal dog breeders. So a number of issues hitting the service, including the shortfall in the pay award, which has contributed to the overspend, unfortunately. On the point about the historical issue with authority specific, my understanding is that those conversations are going ahead at the moment, and I'm sure we can provide an update on that in due course as to how that is going to be resolved.
Thank you, Chair. And thanks, Helen.
Yeah, thanks, Helen. Any other questions? No, shall we hand back to Helen again then to introduce the operational performance?
Many thanks, Chair. I'm actually going to cover now a little bit on human resources, which is, you'll find it 2.3 in the report, and just briefly to highlight, as we always do on these occasions, for the year our sickness absence was just under 7 days per full-time equivalent member of staff, and that is a marked improvement on the previous financial year, when that figure stood at nearly 10.5 days per full-time equivalent. And really pleasing within that is a near halving of the long-term sickness absence rate year on year, which in the 23-24 financial year stood at 3.7 days per full-time equivalent. So this is really encouraging to see this improvement in sickness absence. 2.4, I'm just touching here on recruitment and retention. Again, something which we've brought to Joint Committee on a number of occasions before, and our concern over the difficulty in recruiting the right people with the right skills into roles. And again, this is something which is causing a difficulty right across the country. It isn't peculiar to SRS. So very much an eye for us in improving where we can recruitment, and absolutely crucially in the retention of staff. We've done some work during the year looking at our job titles, and I've included a little bit of narrative at 2.5 just to explain what that is about. A number of issues here in terms of officer names. As you're aware, we use quite generic names such as Commercial Services Officer, Neighbourhood Services Officer, rather than reflecting the professional disciplines of environmental health and trading standards. So a survey was conducted across staff. This is something which has been raised on a number of occasions over the years, and an overwhelming 97% of staff said that they would far prefer to have titles which reflected their professional discipline, something which they've worked very, very hard for through their academic studies. And the big impact that we see that this will have in terms of assisting with recruitment is the very fact that the way people look for jobs at the moment, it'll be a Google search, it'll be something on Indeed or one of the other platforms. And if you're looking for an environmental health post, looking for a standards post, then those are the keywords that you will put in. So we're hopeful that this, which is a piece of work in progress, will pay dividends in terms of our recruitment process too. 2.6, just to remind everyone again how we're doing with our Grow Our Own approach, and this followed from the difficulties in perhaps some of the more traditional recruitment, so looking to grow our own staff, and some examples there of how we've been able to do that during the course of 23-24, some fast tracking of some food officers. 2.7, a little update on the match funding that we've done over the years since 2017 for members of staff to do additional qualifications. And as I've said in the report, the success here just shows how SRS values its staff and supports their development, but also in equipping the staff with those essential skills and behaviours to shape future leaders. And you'll see from the list a number of different master's degrees have been attained, which is wonderful news. 2.8 it's mentioned something again which we've spoken about on a number of occasions before, and it's our interaction with academic institutions, and specifically Cardiff Metropolitan University, which delivers the environmental health degree course. And again, we'll be looking to provide a number of work placements for students. And something else which we've done in conjunction with Cardiff Metropolitan University is to set up 2 awards to recognise the achievements of students who are graduating with their environmental health degree. The awards have been set up in memory of 2 of our much missed environmental health colleagues who passed away in service in 2022. So these awards were allocated for the first time in June 2023, and they are the Zoe Pieris Award, which recognises the highest achieving final year degree student by exam grade, and also the Rachel Stickler Award, which recognises the student who best exemplifies the values of the environmental health profession through their commitment, drive and positive attitude. So a great way to recognise achievement among students, but also to remember, as I say, our much missed colleagues. 2.9, an update on regulatory apprenticeship. We continue to lead on that for Wales at level 4, and some significant developments on that. And thought is now turning to development of a degree level apprenticeship for environmental health and trading standards. And again, we're pushing to see that become a reality. And 2.10, just to finish this section on human resources, this report and the business plan which follows, it demonstrates the achievements of the service over the course of the last year. And none of that would be possible without our fantastic staff. And it is an occasion for me to thank them for all that they do in delivering such great work. So I'm going to move on now, Chair, if there are no questions on that section on human resources. I'll just pause if there are.
Can I just say, send our thanks as well to all the staff for some excellent results there. The courses they're on and the work, and obviously for the work they're doing. I think tremendous job done.
Thank you, Chair. So I'll move now to 2.11, where we start to talk about operational performance. And I won't dwell on this, but at 2.12, I've covered what we traditionally cover in the annual report, which are the former public accountability measures for broadly compliant food establishments and for empty properties. I won't dwell on the broadly compliant. We will be looking at that in a little bit more detail when we come on to the performance tables. And then in relation to empty homes, simply to say that the great work has continued on this in both Bridgend and in Cardiff. And I think it's really significant in the case of Cardiff that over the course of 23-24, 113 empty properties were returned to use, which is wonderful in creating those usable homes, but also in terms of resolving some often quite long-standing issues of nuisance being caused by empty and dilapidated properties. So some great work there across Bridgend and Cardiff, as we have done over the years on empty homes. And delighted that we're now able to fulfil that same role for the Vale of Glamorgan Council. This was something that wasn't authority specific for the Vale previously, but in 23-24, we've been able to, with additional resource, appoint an environmental health professional to work on that empty homes piece for the Vale. So a really positive development there. I'm going to pass now for the multicoloured tables of performance. And I'm hoping that Mark or Matt will be able to share this for us. And I'm going to pass, if I may, Chair, to Christina and then to Will to look at these performance figures for the year.
Okay, bear with us a minute, Helen. I'll just get those up now. That's the Appendix 1, is that correct? Yeah, bear with me a second. Can I just check, Matt, my share screen option has come up?
Yes, it has.
Thank you. Right, I'm hoping that's come up for everyone.
That has, Mark. Thank you. If
Lovely,
you could
thanks.
if you could scroll down for me, just to the
Yeah,
next.
of course. Yeah, bear with me a second. Sorry, I'll just move that up a bit.
Lovely, thank you. And apologies, Mark, there's going to be quite a bit of scrolling on this one. So,
Okay, of course.
but good morning, everybody, and thank you for this. Obviously, I'm here to present in terms of the food and trading standards performance, and I'll be passing to my colleague Will in relation to his area of work. So, first of all, on the screen in front of you there relates to high-risk food hygiene inspections, and that is the category A and B rated premises. Category A requiring an inspection on a frequency of every 6 months, and category B every 12 months. And a colour that we like to see there, in that it's all green and 100% completed as reported for end of year, which is fantastic. If you could scroll down for me, Mark. I think it's just freezing there, Mark, isn't it? I'm looking for the category C rated inspections, which is on the next page. That's it, that's lovely, thank you. And Councillor Stivignano, this is what you were really questioning in relation to the finance report, and this sort of explains how we've utilised some of that agency contractor funds. So as you'll see, in relation to category C rated food hygiene inspections, those requiring an inspection frequency of every 18 months. Again, we've hit 100% on those premises. You'll recall that there was a significant backlog in relation to this category of food hygiene inspections required, and hence the use of contractors and also staff utilising overtime and so on to achieve this target. So a really pleasing result there, and that means that going into this financial year going forward, that gives us a real back to a reset in terms of where we are in delivering that performance. That's really pleasing to see. So some fantastic work by the team again in terms of delivering that. Mark, I'm going to ask you to scroll down again, if I may. This relates to new businesses. New businesses for food hygiene inspections. And as you'll see, we have some ambers there, but just to draw your attention to the figures, we were very, very close to achieving the 90% target. Again, this was an area where there was significant backlog due to COVID and repurposing of staff. But again, compared to where we were this time last year, that just means significant progress in terms of what has been achieved. And I'm anticipating that this financial year we'll be able to catch up in terms of those new businesses. Okay, Mark, if you could scroll down again for me. Lovely, thank you. Okay, so the broadly compliant performance here is what's mentioned in the body of the annual report. And that really is a performance measure, not from our performance as a team, but actually what the food businesses are achieving whilst on inspections. So as you can see, we are achieving quite high, broadly compliant figures, so above the national average there. So that's presenting as green. Thanks, Mark. We'll go on to the next one. These are the high-risk trading standards inspections, and as you can see, 100% across the board there. So nothing particularly to report other than well done to the team on this. If we can go down again, Mark. Lovely, and this relates to new businesses for trading standards. Now you'll note that we have an amber and some green and some reds there, and there are some factors that you need to be aware of it in relation to how these inspections are carried out, specifically as there is an intrinsic link to food hygiene inspections, in that officers conducting the hygiene inspections will often undertake the food standards inspections at the same time, so that we have a 2-for-1, if you like, a buy one get one free in terms of inspections. some of the agency staff used last year were not able to perform the food standards element as well as the food hygiene, and therefore there is a slight lag in terms of this performance measure, which is resulting in a slightly lower amount to that of the food hygiene performance. But that said, I'm confident that this year we'll be able to catch up. All the staff colleagues that we have in the food hygiene team are all validated to do food standards as well, so they will be able to do both inspections at the same time. I'm moving down again for me, if you would, please, Mark. Thank you. And this is an unusual performance measure in that it talks about significant breaches in terms of trading standards. So that is where we find a non-compliance in terms of trading standards legislation. Now, the performance measure really is that those matters are dealt with before the end of the financial year. But of course, it's very difficult for us to achieve that performance measure because, of course, we may get non-compliance detected on the 1st of March, and we're perfectly within legal timeframes. And therefore, we're not going to achieve that performance measure of having that all cleared up and through the legal processing by 31st of March. So to give some confidence, we are able to report that all of those matters where we're conducting investigations are perfectly within legal timeframes and all is well in terms of that performance measure. I think, Mark, that's all from my side of things. So happy to take any questions from members in relation to food and trading standards performance before I pass to Will.
Councillor Stephen,
No,
come in.
just to say, Christina, that I always find your reports really interesting, and it is really good work. And I'd like to pass on my congratulations to the team because it has been hard going. I can see that. So yeah, it's just well done to the whole team and to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. It's good to be in this position at last.
Yep. Well done. Any other questions? No hands coming up. Then we have back to Will, I think, is next, is it?
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think I'm going to need Mark, if he can, to put the slides back up, if that's not too much of a problem.
Yeah, bear with me. Well, I'll just reshare my screen.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, so if you can go on to the next one. Thanks. So this is the first one for me, and it's the percentage of domestic noise and air complaints responded to within 3 working days. So it's very difficult to see, certainly on my screen, the numbers involved, but we do get an awful lot of noise and air complaints across the 3 authorities. And when it comes to hits on the website, noise and air pollution is always the highest rated, just because of the number of issues that we have. So the target is that we achieve 90% within 3 working days, and we've exceeded that with 93% in that time frame. And that's really down to the hard work and dedication of the the officers across the three authorities can be difficult work, and you don't always get the resolution that complainants wish for, but certainly it does show the scale of the problem and the resources that we have to commit to try and deal with it. If you'd like to move on then to the next one, Mark. So this one is a more challenging target from a time frame perspective, in that it relates to the percentage of commercial and industrial noise and air complaints responded to within 1 working day. So we tend to prioritise these because they can have a detrimental effect on larger numbers of people, and often we're dealing with businesses where we can get a quicker resolution. I don't think you can see the bottom of that slide, Mark, if you just want to take it down a tad. There we are. So you'll see we've just missed that target. We aim to get to 75% within 1 working day, so we've just dipped under that. That again, you know, there were over 1,000 complaints in addition to the domestic noise and air complaints that we received. And that was partly due to resource. But also we have had issues with complaints being logged in time for our officers to respond. So that's something we're working on with the business admin support team as well to try and resolve that issue. But still, it's a good performance, and only just sort of underneath the target we've set ourselves. If you go on to the next one then, Mark, please. So this one is noise and air pollution complaints responded to, which relate to car alarms. I won't dwell on this other than we exceeded our target, and we dealt with over 109 complaints within the year. Moving on to the next one then, Mark, please. So this is the percentage of licensed premises applications received and determined within the 2-month period that we're allowed. And normally this is always 100%, because it's a legal requirement, and secondly, the teams do work hard to ensure they meet that. But you'll note that there are we're just under that, and that's because of industrial action, really, which was beyond the SRS control in Cardiff, which meant that some of the hearings couldn't go ahead within the stipulated time period. Otherwise, they all would have been met. If you move down to the next one then, Mark, this relates to personal applications, and you'll see that is a suite of green, which, as Christina said, we like to see. And then if you'll quickly go through, Mark, to the last one I'll discuss. If you skip gambling, because we didn't have any, we only had 1 application. But if you go down to the next one, this relates to minimum energy efficiency standards. Now, there is some text in the report, which I'll very briefly cover, but safe to say, we've had a year where we've been trying to get to grips with this issue of minimum energy efficiency standards across the 3 areas, and there's been some good progress, and we've improved a total of 138 properties where we've taken the EPC into compliance, and also 127 unrated properties have been improved. But as I said, there's a little bit of text in the report which I'll briefly touch on, so I'll come back to that one. And as far as I'm concerned, that is all of my input. So I think that that's everything from me, Chair, unless there's any questions.
Yes, Councillor Sivan-Garn. Question, Will?
Thank you, Chair, and thanks, Will, for that. And again, congratulations to all the team for all their hard work. Please pass on that to them. I'm just curious, Will, 1,000 complaints from businesses around noise, and so is that residents?
Yeah.
So say of those 1,000 complaints, or you know, has there been an increase, say from the previous years? And the other question was, how is it determined? So are we determining it in favour of the resident, or are the residents just complaining at any slight noise? Or it's quite a lot, isn't it?
It is a lot. I mean, noise and air complaints, as I said, when it comes to demands on the service, it is by far the greatest reactive demand that we have across the whole of the SRS. You know, and that reflects the fact that we do live in close proximity to each other, and entertainment venues, which you know, does lead to conflict occasionally. Well, not more than occasionally, obviously, as the statistics show. In relation to increases, there has been quite a significant trend of increase, I'd say, over the last 9 years. Whether there's been an increase from last year, I don't think there's been a vast increase. But what we get is that where you have developments, particularly in urban areas where you have, you know, there's a propensity for city centre living, people are moving into accommodation, which is sometimes cheek by jowl with commercial outlets. You do have, you can get issues there, particularly if you try and deal with those through the planning process. But that, you know, when businesses are operational, that can give rise to concerns. And I know it's a particular concern we've been discussing with planning colleagues in Cardiff, but it equally applies to issues in the Vale and Bridgend as well. In respect of where we come down for businesses, we always take a measured approach, both to enforcement and how we deal with these complaints. It's the test of statutory nuisance, for instance, if it's noise nuisance, is one of a test of reasonableness, really. You know, is the business doing all that it can to mitigate any noise that it's making? Is it complying with its planning consent? Is it has it implemented conditions that were in place to try and prevent noise, either in the planning process or through the licensing process? And then there's a physical test that the officers will have where they go to the complainant's property, and they have to apply certain sort of professional tests as to whether they think the noise that's being complained about passes that threshold for statutory nuisance, which is much more than just sort of a mere annoyance. It's got to really interfere materially with the use of your property. So every case is different. To sort of should answer quickly, and it'll be up to the officer to take all of those factors into account then in coming to a conclusion as to whether the council would take action.
So of those 1,000, have we taken? Could you say?
Yes.
How many?
Well, I haven't got the figures in front of me. I'm happy to send them to you. How many of those have related to formal action? I mean, it's a bit of a pyramid effect in that you'll get complaints, and of those we'll write to businesses, and that will have the effect of mitigating the problem. Then a much smaller amount, we might have to do some further work and we might serve notice. And then a very small amount, we might, you know, take the prosecution or call for licensing review. So the numbers where we actually take formal enforcement are quite small in comparison with the numbers of complaints that we have. But obviously, the fact that we engage with businesses will have that effect, hopefully, to resolve the problem. But you can never guarantee that you're going to resolve it to the satisfaction of a complainant. We have to apply the test that we have to apply as to whether we think it's sufficiently intrusive that we take action.
Yeah, I was just curious to see whether complaints are, you know, if they have been reasonable complaints, and you know, I'm just curious to know that, you know.
More than happy to provide that information.
Yeah, great.
We will have it.
Yeah, perfect.
Thanks.
Thank you, Will.
Councillor Drake, do you want to come in?
Yes, I just wanted to say about the incident that happened in Dow last week. That caused a lot of panic, particularly because in my ward, it's alongside Dow.
Mhm.
And a lot of people were getting in touch with me, but I think it's been sorted out now. My next door neighbour actually works there, and he said it's
Yeah.
under investigation what actually happened.
Yeah, I was aware of it, and actually Helen texted me on the day to notify me, have you seen what's happening? And it would have come through formally as well. The Dow is actually regulated by a different body, National Resources Wales. So it wouldn't have been a direct regulatory role, but I know that officers have been in contact and are aware that thankfully there was no ill health effects, but obviously they're undertaking a review to see what happened.
It did frighten a lot of people because it's a huge plant, you know. So
Oh yes, yeah.
Yeah.
can
Oh, thank
imagine.
you very much for that.
No worries.
Thanks, Will.
Okay, I think I'm handing back to Helen.
I think so.
It is me, Will. Yes, thank you. So just briefly, to take members to 2.14 in the main body of the report, and this is just to give a mention to the prosecution work that is concluded over the course of the year, and all the details are in the quite chunky Appendix 2. Where we've listed all the cases that have concluded over the course of 2023-24. There are actually 46 cases concluded. And as a point of reference, in the same period for 22-23, there were 28 cases concluded. So that is a measure, again, as you know, Christina's spoken about earlier, clearing some of the backlogs that we've had. But this is another measure of the fact that some of those delays in the court process are finally working their way through. And it really is a huge thanks to the 3 legal services that we work with, that we've been able to achieve some great outcomes, which, as I say, all the detail is there. But it represents the whole breadth of the different areas that SRS is responsible for. I'm more than happy to answer any questions on any of the entries in Appendix 2, either now or in a bit more detail later on, as members wish.
Nothing coming up, Helen.
Lovely. Thank you, Chair. I will press on. So in the next part of the report, we're talking about significant service achievements, and we do this under the umbrellas which are familiar to members of our strategic themes. So the first one of those is improving health and well-being. So for 2.19, down to 2.21 and then 2.23, covering food, special procedures, and vapes. I'm going to hand over to Christina now.
Thanks, Helen. And yes, I'm going to be doing the food, a little bit on special procedures again, and vapes for you today, and then handing back to colleagues. So just in relation to 2.19, really highlighting again the size and scale of the food service in SRS. It's obviously the biggest in Wales. It's the footprint is around 20% of the population. And of course, we have over 6,500 food businesses registered with us, which is an absolute machine in terms of the work that we do. We, in terms of the food scene with us, it's a very vibrant, fast-paced environment. We've seen lots of changes in terms of how food establishments work, in terms of the hours that they are doing, but also the different types of cuisines that are being offered by the food businesses, which of course requires us as officers to keep up with the current trends and the different ways of preparing food. Helen touched on the significant increase in enforcement work. Of course, the more visits that we've done, we've seen that some have found it difficult to remain in that good order, if you like, and remain having those high scores. And reflecting on that, you'll see at 2.20, the increase in enforcement action in the food service. And the bullet points there just details the 8 food prosecution cases and the conclusion of fines and results, which of course is a total of 9 months in suspended prison sentences, fines of over £29,000, costs of £11,533, 60 hours community service, and the issue of 3 food hygiene prohibition orders, which prevent individuals from having a role or working in the food business, which is the highest charge, if you like, in terms of results that we can have. So really just highlighting again, you already know, we brief you on this, just the real challenge of such a vibrant and busy food service that we have in SRS. Moving on to 2.21 is special procedures. So throughout last financial year, we provided you updates in relation to what's about to come in that special procedures regime is due to come in now in November 2024. Of course, this is a licensing regime where practitioners and premises are required to become licensed. But of course, there's an interface with the health and safety team then who go out and ensure that all is in order in terms of compliance and in terms of IP&C controls there. So as it says in 2.21, the scheme is for acupuncture, body piercing, electrolysis and tattooing, which of course, as I said, comes in anticipated in November 2024. And then the last mention from me in 2.23 is really in relation to vapes. We've talked previously in terms of how the popularity of vapes is really becoming an issue. And of course, the non-compliance that we see in terms of permitted tank sizes, and of course, the work that is ongoing in terms of our team. Paragraph 2.2 the number of test purchases that were attempted and inspections conducted, which has resulted in enforcement action. And of course, you'll all be aware of a recent closure order that was achieved by the team from a premise selling vapes and also illicit tobacco. So happy to take any questions on those points, but as I said, you've been briefed previously on this piece of work, hopefully that's no surprise.
Can I just say thank you again to the teams for this? I think I certainly get a lot of queries from people regarding vapes, and I think the public would be really pleased to know that this is being looked at and dealt with. Thanks again.
Thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Chair. I think I'm taking over here briefly on building safety and a little bit on MEES. So starting with building safety, there are 2 main takeaways for members of the committee to note from the report. Firstly, Welsh Government ministers have renewed their commitment to introduce a new building safety bill within the current Senate term. So SRS are playing a full role in responding to consultations and documents aimed at obviously shaping how that bill is brought into force. The Welsh Government, I should add as well, have also renewed their commitment to leaseholders, and they're making it clear that they don't feel that leaseholders should be responsible financially for any remediation costs that might be attributed to the construction of the building. So those are some of the high-level strategic commitments Welsh Government have given. Secondly, the joint inspection team set up by Welsh Government is now operational. It's been a number of years coming into fruition, but it now has a full complement of staff and is actually in the process of engaging with local authorities in implementing an inspection programme of high-rise buildings in Wales. So we've had some initial discussions with the head of the JIT, or the Joint Inspection Team, and we're meeting with them in the fire service this month to discuss how that programme of inspection goes forward, and obviously anything that comes out of that, we'll be able to brief members going forward. Turning then to...
Can I just come in?
Certainly.
I just wanted to make a declaration of interest. I sort of didn't pick it up earlier on, but I live in a premise, and I'm a leaseholder of a premise that is likely to benefit, we hope, from some of the fire grants that are about. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Chair. Finally then, for me, turning to MEES, you'll have seen in the performance report there was some text in there. The report at 2.32 lays out the legislative requirements for privately rented properties in Wales, and that's that all new and existing tenancies should have an EPC rating of E or above, unless they have an exemption. So the last year has seen some really good progress with officers focusing on F&G rated properties together with properties which haven't got a rating, and engaging with those landlords and owners, landlords, to make sure they're aware of the legislation and signposting them to available grants that can be used to improve their properties. So we've managed to evidence that we've improved 138 properties from either the F or G rating and taken them out of that rating to E or above, and some 127 unrated properties have been improved. Now, in terms of sort of climate change, the report illustrates that equates to 406 tonnes of CO2 saved and over 420,000 kilowatt hours of energy. So it's very much a work in progress, and next year we are looking as a service to expand this work, and one of our trading standards teams, who sits under Christina, are undertaking some project work looking at if you like, the next steps for those who haven't engaged. And it'll be for Christina then to carry on with the updates to committee and report back on the work that her team have done. So that was everything from me. I think Jason is due to be on next, but I'm happy to take any questions, Chair.
Nothing coming up at the minute, so we can. Thank you,
Okay.
Will.
Thank you.
Hi, Jason.
Yeah, thanks, Will. Hi, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just briefly covering some of the aspects of the work of my teams throughout the year, and just starting on our animal welfare work, paragraphs 2.38 to 2.39, just covering some of that work there, basically. So officers will be dealing with complaints around potentially illegal dog breeding, and in most instances, officers will be acting on intelligence or reports of poor welfare that we receive. And where that intelligence reports are sufficient, we will look to gain entry to properties using our appropriate powers. And officers can be faced with appalling conditions when entering some of these properties. And in such cases, we will be required to seize the animals under veterinary instruction, simply to remove them from the conditions that they're sort of been living in and being subjected to prevent further harm and to prevent any further suffering from those animals, really. So when we do these seizures, obviously this becomes potentially a prolonged process, because you have to go through legal proceedings to get legal ownership of those animals from the courts. And during that process, we are liable to look after those animals, to take care of their welfare, and obviously there's costs associated with that. 2.4 and 2.42 just highlight two cases, successful cases really, where we have taken legal action against potential illegal breeders, basically. So the first case there is highlighting a significant case where 11 dogs and 9 puppies were seized from a property in the Vale of Glamorgan. In this case, 5 of the dogs were immediately euthanized given the conditions that they were faced with, and every single dog that was seized had some sort of medical condition, ranging from eye infections to moderate to severe corkscrews. The rescue centre that we took the dogs to basically informed us that they were probably some of the worst welfare conditions they've ever seen in dogs. So this was a successful prosecution. The 2 defendants received suspended prison sentences as detailed in paragraph 2.41 of 22 and 14 weeks, although they were suspended. And one of the defendants was disqualified for keeping any animals for up to 8 years. The second case was undertaken through our major investigations team, really, and it involved an individual who was previously known to us and had previously been prosecuted for animal welfare offences for illegal breeding. That was undertaken in 2021, and the defendant did get an 8-year disqualification at that time. So further intelligence was received that he was still involved, and through the investigations, it was identified that he had breached his order, and as part of this, we included that he was involved in sales of puppies up to £12,000. So he was fined a further £1,000 in order to pay costs of nearly £600. In 2023, again, we were successful with the RSPCA Paw Print Awards. These awards recognise, from the RSPCA, they recognise work that local authorities do in terms of promoting and improving welfare for animals. So this really reflects the work of our animal wardens and animal welfare officers, and we achieved 3 gold awards for our licensing work, animal licensing work, our stray dogs provision, and our kenneling services. And it was nice to see that we actually improved the category of the award we received for our kenneling up to the gold award for 23, when in 2022 we only achieved silver. And recognition really that SRS was one of the only services in the UK to achieve the gold standard in all these awards. Just moving on to air quality, obviously we have briefed members throughout the year on the air quality work, but just to give a quick overview of what we achieved in terms of the air quality work last year, and this is paragraphs 2.45 to 2.53. A key achievement in 23-24 was finally the finalisation of the air quality action plan for the Park Street Air Quality Management Area in Bridgend. 2 key measures within this action plan have already been implemented on this, and we're really starting to see the fruits of these interventions in terms of air quality levels on Park Street are significantly reduced, and we will be reporting for the 2023 annual report that compliance has nearly been achieved on Park Street, and we're hoping to see further improvements through that this year as well. The annual progress report for Cardiff, again, summarised the air quality improvements that are continuing to be made in Cardiff. And again, it's pleasing to see within Cardiff itself, there were no exceedances for the air quality standard, the annual objective, the air quality standard for nitrogen dioxide, with all levels at the monitoring locations below the 40 micrograms as an annual average. And work is still ongoing to review and update the clean air strategy for Cardiff, and we'll look to complete that hopefully sometime later this year and into 2025. And work is still ongoing to get agreement with Welsh Government for the permanent clean air scheme for Castle Street, which has been a project that has been going on for a number of years now, and we're nearly getting completion on that. And just a quick update on the air quality within the Vale. Again, the Vale of Glamorgan air quality continues to meet all the objectives, and no monitoring locations have recorded levels for NO2 and exceedance of the annual objective. The Vale of Glamorgan was successful in obtaining funding via ourselves through Welsh Government Local Air Quality Management Fund, and we'll be installing some additional real-time monitoring equipment in the Vale in the coming weeks to increase the real-time capabilities to get more real-time data on air quality across the Vale. I believe that's the end of my update, so happy to take any questions on those 2 areas of work that members may have, Chair.
Thanks, Jason. Nothing coming up yet. So again, well done to the teams. I mean, yeah, some really good work again, and especially with the dogs, and horrible work to have to do, I would imagine. Yeah, thank them all very much.
Yeah, they do come across some very good conditions. Thanks, Chair.
back to me now, Chair, if that's okay. A couple more sections. Safeguarding the vulnerable is another of the strategic themes. So this is starting at 2.54 in the report. I won't dwell on this. We've covered some of this already in relation to vapes. Christina has alluded to that, and issues around underage sales of vapes in particular. And you'll see a 19% failure rate, which obviously is high and of concern, being driven by the availability of vapes. So work continues on that. 2.56, a mention for our prosecution work against rogue builders and doorstep criminals. And I've put together some bullet points there just to encapsulate the impact of our work, which I think for the 23-24 financial year is particularly impressive. 8 years in custodial sentences, another 2 years in suspended prison sentences, and a criminal behaviour order lasting 10 years. And those criminal behaviour orders really do, or they're intended to restrict severely the way in which those individuals are able to trade in the future. So some really, really positive results there. 2.57, a mention for the Wales Illegal Money Lending Unit, which has been busy over the course of the year. Training lots and lots of agencies to assist in actually making sure that people who are falling victim to loan sharks are able to get the help that they need. We know that these people are reluctant to come forward themselves, and very often it's people working for councils, for housing associations, etc., who are able to guide them and help them get the help that that is needed. So some very good training has gone on this year to make sure that those individuals are able to assist the victims and get them to make contact with the unit. 2 prosecutions for illegal money lending, one of which seems to have captivated the press during the course of the year. Interestingly, the loan sharks were both older people, 73-year-old male and an 83-year-old female. And it was the 83-year-old lady that really captured the press imagination with quite a bit of coverage on her case. And really good to see that through the proceeds of crime function, the victims of that female loan shark are actually going to be able to get back the money that they have lost. So I'm happy to pause there. Chair, I can see that Councillor Lewis has got her hand raised.
Yes, do you want to come in, Councillor Lewis?
Thank you, Chair. Yes, Helen, I just want to say massive congratulations to the team. I mean, nobody would suspect an 83-year-old woman of being a loan shark. It's amazing, absolutely fantastic results. So pass my congratulations on to the team, please.
I will do. Thanks, Councillor Lewis. Chair, I'll move now, if I may, to the next heading, supporting the local economy. I won't dwell on this. A lot of this is going to be familiar ground for Joint Committee, but just to report some positive progress under this umbrella over the course of the year. So you mentioned our primary authority scheme, which we've been able to extend. We now have a total of 36 partnerships, some local, some national companies, and a really, really good mix there. 2.62, given a mention to illegal tobacco, which continues to be a huge problem for us. It causes a problem on a number of fronts. Firstly, it retails at about half the price of genuine product. It therefore means that smokers who wouldn't normally be able to continue smoking, because they're able to get cheap illegal product, they continue smoking. So there is a health impact. It also undermines the tobacco controls on things like the display ban and underage sales, all those controls which exist with a legitimate trade, which just don't bite in respect of illegal tobacco sales. But the reason we've included illegal tobacco in this particular section is the impact on legitimate businesses. As I say, if a shop opens up selling illegal tobacco for half the price of the genuine product, then those legitimate businesses, possibly in the same street, won't be getting the business that they used to. So an impact there. 2.63 just quantifies the activity over the course of 23-24 in relation to illegal tobacco, seizures, etc. And then 2.64 highlights a very recent case which concluded in the last financial year, but you'll be aware was sentenced last Friday. This is Operation Usk with a total of 25 years custodial sentences and a further 9 years of suspended sentences. A lot of hard work for the team, but a great outcome there. And then I wanted to mention another first, a 2.65, again, trying to find different ways to tackle this problem of illegal tobacco and similar products. And this is our first application to close a retail outlet, which was successful in March, 3-month closure. And that, I'm pleased to report, has just been extended for another 3 months. So that particular premises won't be able to open until September. And again, a huge thanks to Legal Services for all their support with that area of work. Happy to pause there, Chair, if there are any questions on that. And if not, I'll move on to maximising the use of resources. And again, just to highlight the different ways that we are trying to work smarter, as efficiently as possible. And there are some examples set out there of how we are continuing to do that. And really, I guess the takeaway for this section, moving down to 2.73, it's that tension, I suppose, between finding budget savings, while at the same time, this expectation being there that as new pieces of legislation come in and they fall within the remit of the service, then of course there is a responsibility for us to actually enforce that legislation. So as we're aware, there are some new pieces of legislation coming in, likely over the course of this year and next. So it will be a challenge for us to be able to juggle, if you like, all of those responsibilities within existing resources. And then 2.74, linked to all of that, the continued pressure on public sector finances. We need to redouble our efforts, and something which is already underway, to establish new income streams, something that we have been very successful at, really pushing those boundaries, because that will become more and more important in sustaining the service. Happy to take any questions there, Chair. And if not, nearly there now. If I can take you to, where are we, 2.102, right at the end of the report, because obviously we've done the finance input. And this is the key milestones for 24-25, which links back to where we came in at the start of the report at 2.1. And just to highlight the fact that 2 of these have been tweaked, if you like, in line with developments. So bullet point 5 makes reference to our growing our own approach in terms of recruitment and retention. And point 6, again, makes the case that cost recovery and income generation now more than ever is vitally important for the service. So that takes us to the end of the report, Chair. And then just to take you back to the recommendations, which were number 1, that the Joint Committee approves this report and authorises the Chief Executive, Vale Glamorgan Council, to forward a copy of it to the heads of paid service for the other partner councils. And number 2, that the 23-24 unaudited outturn position is noted.
Thank you, Helen. And do we, are we prepared to accept the recommendations? It looks like we're all in favour. No hands are going up. Do we need a proposer to do that?
I'm happy to move that, Chair.
Lovely, thank you. And the seconder? We have Pamela. I take it you're happy to do that? Councillor Drake?
Yes, I'm more than happy to do that.
Thank you very much. There we are. Recommendations are accepted. And so moving on then to agenda item 8. That's the draft SRS 2004 to 2005 business plan. That will be Helen again to present that, please.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, hopefully quite a brief report, this one, just to introduce the SRS business plan for 2024-25, and just very briefly to take you through the report. The business plan, it is the golden thread or the line of sight to the corporate priorities of the 3 partner councils. And quite hard to believe that this is the 10th business plan produced for the shared service. So in terms of development of the plan, it's been created through the SRS business planning process to reflect the input of officers and team managers, while at the same time acknowledging at the strategic level the need for our work to respond to local, regional and national agendas, some of those emerging themes, the new legislation, etc., as well as to global events as and when required. So the plan, which you'll see attached as an appendix, it shows how that golden thread works, how we turn priorities, emerging themes, reflecting the corporate priorities of the 3 councils, distilling it, if you like, under those 5 strategic themes that we have, and then producing an action plan for the year. So it'll be familiar format for you. We have streamlined some sections this year, but in line with what the requirement is, we're able to set out the services provided by SRS, providing an indication of the activities planned for the current year, the financial projections for the year, and a review of performance for the last year, 23-24. I'm more than happy, Chair, to take any specific questions on the report or on the business plan itself, conscious of time, or to do that outside of this meeting.
Nothing is coming up now, so I think, yes, if anybody has questions, maybe to take it outside of the meeting. So, shall I move to the recommendations? Sorry, you're muted.
Muted, Helen.
Sorry, apologies. Shall I read the recommendations out, Chair?
Yes, please, yeah.
Yeah, okay. So recommendations are that the Joint Committee notes the content of the report and approves the SRS business plan for 24-25. And also that Head of Shared Regulatory Services is authorised to make administrative amendments to the 24-25 business plan should the need arise. So we don't need to bring it back to Joint Committee for minor amendments over the course of the year.
Excellent, thank you. So can I ask somebody to move the recommendation?
I'll move that, Chair.
Thank you very much. And somebody to second, please.
I'll second that.
Thank you very much. And I take we all agree. Yeah, lovely. Thank you very much. Recommendations approved. And now, let's see, where are we now? Item 9 is the Health and Safety Enforcement Plan, 2024-25. And that'll be Christine covering that, lovely. Christina, sorry. Thank you.
Thanks, Chair. And this report is something that you'll be well aware of, given your background, Councillor Mackie. So this report relates to the Section 18 plan, which is a requirement under the Health and Safety at Work Act. It's a plan that we are duty bound to produce every year. So, as you know, we, along with the Health and Safety Executive, are responsible for enforcement of the Health and Safety at Work Act 1974. As I said, Section 18 makes a requirement that we produce this plan every year, detailing how we as a service discharge our duties in terms of the demands on the service, a risk-based work programme, and the resource that we have available. So the draft report is contained in Appendix 1. I'm not planning on going through that in any specific detail other than to take any questions from you. But you will see that Section 3 of that plan details the planned interventions that we have, along with the normal day-to-day work in terms of health and safety work and in enforcement. So we are, of course, acutely aware of the work coming down the line in terms of special procedures. And so our interventions this year have taken that into consideration. But of course, the Health and Safety Executive every year produces a document called the LAC 67-2 document, which details the national priorities in terms of health and safety enforcement. And therefore, this plan takes account of that work, along with our own local intelligence, complaints and so on that we've received in terms of determining what intervention projects that we take account of for the year ahead. So in terms of the recommendations for this report, number 1 is to approve the Health and Safety Enforcement Service Plan, and number 2 is to authorise Helen to make those administrative amendments should the need arise. As I said, happy to take any questions, but given the time, I didn't think you'd appreciate me going through the vast detail of that report.
This is true. Are there any questions? None coming up. So in that case, I'll ask for somebody to recommend we approve. To propose, yeah. Yes, thank you, Councillor Drake. And somebody second that, please.
I'll second, Chair.
Oh, thank you very much, Councillor Lewis. There we are. So and everyone agrees. Yep, lovely. So there we are. Your recommendation is carried. Thank you. And so, is that the end? Where are we to? No, appointment of proper officers. Yes, I knew there was something else. Just couldn't find it on my sheet.
Apologies, Jill. I lost connection for a moment there, so I was scrabbling back to rejoin. But yeah, proper officers sits with me again.
All right.
And I'll go through that with you now, if that's okay. So in terms of this report, this is really an administrative task in terms of proper officers. We come to you every now and again the correct personnel in terms of Public Health Wales for proper officers and port medical officers detailed within our authorisation procedures just when they have a change of personnel. So this is just really an update report. The details of those individuals from Public Health Wales, consultants in communicable disease listed there are the right people. We've just had this list through from Public Health Wales. So this is really just an administrative task for you in terms of authorising those individuals to act on our behalf where the need arises. So in terms of the recommendations for this report, it is the list of current proper officers, medical officers is out of date and requires amendments, but we are required to come through this joint committee for you to give that authorisation, and hence the need for this report.
Any questions on this report? No, all happy. And can I ask for somebody to nominate that we accept this the recommendations?
I'll move that, Chair.
Thank you very much, Councillor Lewis. Somebody second, please. Oh, there we are. Councillor Drake, thank you.
I'll second that.
Thank you. Now, I take it we're all happy then to accept the recommendations. Thanks. And I think that takes us to the end of our agenda, unless anybody else has anything they want to add. Any other business, anyone? Yes, Councillor Drake?
I just wanted to thank everybody for their involvement, because it's a very, very difficult job, and they got to be congratulated on what they've done.
Absolutely agree with that. And any other comments from anyone? No. Again, well, thank you all for attending, and look forward to seeing you next time. Is there anything else, Mark, that we need to cover?
No, and there's no urgent items in the part 1 or 2 either,
No.
Chair. So we've covered everything. Thank you.
Yeah. Thank you all very much. Bye.
Bye,
Thank you,
everybody.
Chair.